So, ladies and gentlemen, as I promised you when I introduced this recording, I am now interviewing the daughters of Joseph Beer. I have Béatrice Beer. Say hello.
Hello, bonjour, hello.
And I have Dr. Suzanne Beer.
Hi, bonjour.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this for agreeing to be on the show today. Let me start off by telling you how this all started, folks. About a few months ago, actually back in May, I attended a concert at the Lincoln Center. It was Simon Rattle conducting, what was the work? It was a Mahler work. I believe it's Leafed on the Air.
Yep.
And backstage, or we were trying to get in to see Sir Simon, I met Béatrice, and you had this package with you. And you were so desperate to get to him. And I said, what's going on here? And then, after a while, you didn't get the chance, I'm not sure if you did, but then later you were kind enough to send it to me. And it was this recording on CPO of your father's operetta. You're going to help me here. I call it Polish Wedding. That is the American translation of it. But how do you pronounce it?
Polnische Hochzeit.
Polnische Hochzeit. Right.
Polnische Hochzeit. Perfect, yes.
And it's a really fascinating story. First of all, I have to commend the both of you for really championing your father's work. Because reading about his life, which is a fascinating life, it's tragic. It's we'll get into that. But he wrote this opera. This is really considered to be one of the true last operettas. It premiered in 1937, if I'm correct.
Yes.
He had a previous success. It was an opera called Der Prinz von Shiraz.
Yes.
In 1934, which premiered in the Zurich Opera House. And then he wrote this work, which was a smash hit. Unfortunately, the very next year, the Anschluss took place. His music was banned by the Nazis. And he had a very difficult time. Talking about survival. Your father was an absolute survival. He first fled to France, where I think at one time he was reduced to even eating garbage. And then he made his way to Nice, where he remained there, and he really remained there for the rest of his life. But not surprisingly, he was in hiding during those war years. Didn't compose any music. Struggled to make a living. And the thing about it, which in a way I admire about him, is that he was really how can I phrase this? He was really adamant. I mean, he would not work with certain people because he felt that they were Nazi collaborators. He was true to his word. And the fact is that the experience he had really, tell me if I'm wrong, but experience he had really affected him, and he didn't really compose much music for the rest of his life. He did compose.
I'm sorry, Sergio. Is this I know that something of that nature was written in the back cover of the CD, but it's.
Oh, I'm not going by the CD. I'm not going by the back of the CD.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm not going by the back of the CD.
Oh, okay. No, because he did compose never stopped composing till his last breath. Basically, he composed during the war. He composed without a piano, everything in his head, and he even composed a ghost opera for somebody to try to which was performed at the Zurich Opera House. That was during the war to obtain some funds to send to his parents and to try to free them from Poland and get them, back to safety, but which failed, obviously. And then after the war, he composed every day. That's the way we knew him, like 18 hours a day. And nothing got performed. Nothing got performed. That's the part that's right. But he went on composing daily,
Well, as a matter of fact, the one opera you wrote, the Ghost Opera, you're right, he wrote that without a piano. He was a prodigy.
Yes, I know. Yes, and even actually, during the war in hiding, he did not even have a piano. He would write everything, hearing all the instruments in his head, and then when it was performed, it was also played on the radio. He heard it on the shortwave radio, I think, and that's the first time he heard it, and he said, "Oh, it's really good. I would have made a few, corrections here and there, but pretty much I'm happy." So yeah, everything is in his head, and in a few weeks he'd whip it. Actually, you know what, the Polnische Hochzeit was written in 3 weeks, the whole thing. So, yeah, they call him the prodigy.
Well, can I just ask you a question? Why, I guess it was too difficult to come to America.
Oh, are you asking why he didn't come, Sergio?
Yes.
Yes, I guess he was, maybe he just was in Nice composing, I mean, he did have an offer to teach in a major conservatory in New York, but he turned it down. He did not want to teach. He had an offer to write a simplified version of his doctorate by Yankelevich, who was like the prominent French philosopher, musicologist, and he turned that down. He just wanted to compose. That was his only passion, so.
But let me ask you, I asked you both of you, what was it like? He was writing all this music, but it wasn't being performed. I would be, if I was in the situation of that, I would be incredibly frustrated.
Suzanne, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I didn't think about it being performed. It was so much like reality. We were used to it, and I was used to listening to him playing it on the piano, and it was beautiful. I was putting my ear against the door because I didn't have the right to listen to it, so I was putting my ear, and I was so happy listening to his music.
Yes, but and you said, I think you asked if it was frustrating for us or for him, Sergio?
For him.
Oh, yeah, it's okay, well, so my thought of that, and Suzanne, you can help me, he tried off and on, go ahead.
He was trying all the time to get performances. He was traveling regularly to Vienna, to Paris, to Zurich, and was always trying to get performances. I think he was very, very frustrated about it, that's for sure, yes. But he didn't want to have an orchestra which wasn't able. He always wanted to have a good enough orchestra because he thought his music couldn't be played by non-professional, by students. Like, he had offers of students wanting to play his music, but he discarded it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm glad you brought that point, because as people heard in the first act, this is extraordinary, beautiful music.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm going to get still to record in just a few seconds. It's extraordinary music, and, it's performed by the Munich Radio Symphony Orchestra.
Yes.
And,
yes,
you need an orchestra of that caliber.
Yep.
To play this music. And, you hear influences that he hears. You hear some jazz. You hear, of course, Viennese opera. I mean, he encompasses everything. All these influences that he heard into this work.
Yes. Actually, this was like a youth work. I think he was trying his style, and that's why I don't think of it as a, typical operetta. I think it's going to come down in history as an opera or just a great, Fledermaus or whatever, something that transcends genres, because he included operetta, but there is also some Sturm und Drang, some Brahms. His favorite composers were Brahms, Tchaikovsky, and Beethoven. And Brahms and Tchaikovsky were born on May 7, too. Sorry. Like him.
And also, I have to ask the both of you, just in terms of background, I have to talk about, Suzanne, Dr. Beard is an artist, and Beatrice, of course, is a soprano. I should mention that as well. What was it like living in a house full of music?
Oh. Suzanne?
Yeah, it was great. It was like, it's like a life, It's like his life, he kept it in the music, and we could hear him when he was playing the music, and when he wasn't playing the music, he was a bit like a ghost sometimes, because he was so much in his food.
Yes, it was.
So I think music is like my life now, and it's been like this ever since the beginnings, thanks to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was composing all the time, and like Suzanne said, we were not allowed to, he was very, very focused. So, he was in the back of the apartment playing his piano and composing all day. And so once in a while, he would allow us, he would call us, Mama and my sister and I, to listen to a piece he felt was, ready for us to hear. And I'll never forget those moments. They were like, I was just like in heaven, such beauty. He was a great pianist too. He could have been a concert pianist, but that's also something he turned down. But so just playing on the piano with his melodies, I'll never forget.
Now, just how did he recording? This is, by the way, as I mentioned earlier, folks, on the CPO label. And the CPO is a label I'm very familiar with. I played many recordings on CPO on my show. I have many of their recordings, and their specialty is works which are unknown or rarely played. It's sometimes by well-known composers, but in particular composers who have been overlooked and unjustly overlooked, such as your father. But this is really one of the, this came out earlier this year, I believe. How did this recording come about?
Oh my God. But to make a long story short, my mother, who was my father post-war, he met her post-war. She was his main inspiration and support system, and his only one after the war, basically. So after he passed, she just went crazy wanting to make sure the music was performed. And so to fast forward, like in 2011, she really insisted we should find a publisher. I started by doing concerts all over Europe and the United States of his music to try to rouse interest. And after a while, my mother said, we need to get a publisher here. So we got a fantastic publisher in Vienna. He's a major publisher called Doblinger Musikverlag. And they are helping tremendously. And they're the one who made that connection with CPO and, the Münchner Rundfunk Orchestra, so we have them to thank for. They're fantastic.
And you mentioned, both of you have mentioned that, of course, he was composing all the time, which means, where is that music?
Oh, God, thank you. Yeah, we have two huge, right, Suzanne? We have two huge operas that are still, non-published, coming, among others.
Will they be also eventually recorded by CPO?
We don't know yet. That's, Suzanne, if you want to talk about Stradella, the next project, or you want me to say it, or?
Yeah, talk about it. It's good.
Oh, yeah, just, quickly, so Polnische Hochzeit was composed when he was, in 3 weeks in his mid-20s. Then came the war. He was in hiding, composed Stradella in Venice, mostly in hiding during the war, performed at the Zurich Opera House in 49, premiered at the Zurich Opera House in 1949. So that's the next project. It's not official yet, so we can't give details, but there is a big premiere coming up of that opera, which is like a grand, Zeffirelli type scope opera.
Oh, that's great. And let me ask.
And
go ahead.
Major works that he did after the war, which have never been performed. He did a new Polnische Hochzeit, which is called something like the Ball of the Emperor, or something, has many titles, and the very last one, which is called Mitternachtsonne-Traum, which is Midnight Summer Dream. And he wrote the librettos and the music.
Yeah, after the war, he did the whole thing. Yeah.
And
it is.
Oh, I'm sorry, because I have to ask. Since he wrote all this music, are there also perhaps a symphony, concertos? What else is there?
No, my father was very much into theater music. He really loved combination of the two, and he was really very much into writing librettos, and he has written lots of librettos. We have cardboards full of librettos.
And music, yes. There is one piece of work, when he was... But
and was also thinking about how it was going to be exhibited.
Oh,
so he had also inspired at something visual.
Yeah, the staging part. He said he was not just an opera composer. He said he was also a stage director. And he wrote in the libretti so many stage directions on how it should look. And I'm thinking the stage director is not going to have much to do. Just read what my father wrote. Which I don't know. But I must mention that quickly, as far as your question, is a great question. Because before the war, when he was young, like in school, there's a bunch of lost music which was instrumental, and I think that's when he was still finding his own style. So that's to remain to be found. There is one piece of music that was found at the Universal Edition, which was like Mahler and Beethoven's publisher before, the whole thing. And so I went there in Vienna, and they found a piece called the Triptych, which is, only orchestra score. My father called it a jazz symphony, and that is supposed to be, premiered soon. Only like a 12-minute piece.
Okay.
Yes, and it's completely instrumental. And apparently, it has been played in Vienna last year, and the person who did the paraphrase, because it's a very complicated piece, said they could hear some jazz, of course, influences, but also Scriabin's influence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my sister went to Vienna for a performance of like a condensed version. And you know, Sergio, that my father wrote a whole doctoral thesis on Scriabin, which is supposed to be like sort of like a very hermetic composer, and that's going to be published in Paris soon, where, my sister and I are editing it and making it ready for publishing.
Well, it reminds me of a line that Mahler said. When Mahler said, when his music at the time wasn't being performed, and he said, one day my time will come. And you think that's true with Joseph Beard, that finally his time has come.
That's beautiful. Thank you. It gives me the chills. Thank you, Sergio. That's beautiful. I didn't know Mahler had problems too then.
Oh, great composers always have trouble at first,
Thank you. You give us courage.
Eventually people, if they stray as your father was, you stray true to who you are and your voice and your music. Eventually people will discover you and come to you. Sometimes it takes longer than it should.
That's beautiful. Well, you're one of those. You're a channel of discovery then, Sergio.
Yes. Yeah, I've always loved discovering composers, and new music. And once again, I want to thank the both of you for coming on my show.
Thank you.
I appreciate this so much.
Well, thank you for having us, Sergio.
Thank you so much. And now we'll go off to Act 2.
Okie dokie.